This guide covers all the actions Dawntrail's Gladiator and Paladin learned from level 1 to 100, in order. We go over how each action is meant to be used and recommend ways to use it when relevant. We will not be covering how tanking works in too much detail, as I have a separate video that goes more in depth on this particular subject, that I highly recommend you also take a look at if you're new to tanking. We will summarize the attack rotation at level 50, and then summarize changes in it at level 60, 70, 80, and 90. In the final summary at level 100, we outline an optimized opener and explain how it leads into the general rotation, alongside 2-minute burst considerations. We also touch on the stat priorities of the Paladin. Now then, Fast Blade is your starting weapon skill. It is the first step in a 3-step combo, more commonly called a 1-2-3 combo, so at this point you simply use it repeatedly. At level 2, you learn the ability Fight or Flight. While weapon skills incur a 2.5 second recast timer where you can't cast another weapon skill, abilities are unaffected by this recast timer, and so can be cast between them. However, using any action incurs about half a second of animation locking where you can cast nothing at all. To make the most of Fight or Flight, you should use it as late in the weapon skill cooldown window as you can, commonly referred to as a late weave. I have a video that goes in much more detail with these concepts, as well as explaining in more detail what a global cooldown, GZD, and off-global cooldown, OGZD, is if you would like to learn more. Link in the description. Generally, you should use Fight or Flight as often as you can, and as early as you can, meaning that a fight should optimally begin with Fast Blade, followed by a late-weaved Fight or Flight. The reasoning is that with a modest amount of the skill speed stat, enough that you may naturally find this on your gear as you level up, you may be able to fit an extra weapon skill in the 20-second damage boosting buff from Fight or Flight, but only if you late weave it. At higher levels, this trick of late weaving may stop being relevant altogether. At level 4, you learn the weapon skill Riot Blade, the second step of your 1-2-3 combo. Now, you alternate between Fast Blade and Riot Blade. Continue to use Fight or Flight after Fast Blade, and whenever it comes off cooldown, use it immediately. If you late weave Fight or Flight and have enough skill speed, there is a small gain in making sure Fight or Flight is used after Fast Blade rather than Riot Blade, but delaying it to do so is not really worth it. At level 6, you learn the weapon skill Total Eclipse, your go-to action for area of effect damage, or AoE for short. Use this whenever you're fighting 3 or more enemies. Fight or Flight should still be used as often as you can in AoE combat. On 2 targets, continue to use Fast Blade and Riot Blade, but make sure to alternate targets so you don't lose the attention of either enemy. At level 8, you learn the ability and role action Rampart, which reduces all damage taken for a while. It is best used early on in a fight when there are the most enemies and you will take the biggest brunt of the damage. Make sure to wait with using it until the enemies reach you, such that it blocks the largest amount of damage. You should not save Rampart for when you're close to death. Use it early and often. At level 10, you learn the weapon skill Shield Bash, which deals significantly less damage than Fast Blade and Riot Blade, but as a bonus, stuns the target for 6 seconds. You can use this to prevent spell casts from enemies and stop an enemy from swinging at you for a bit, reducing damage taken. Often, bosses will be immune, but in the early dungeons this is not always the case. Stunning multiple enemies in quick succession in AoE pools can be considered a somewhat desperate tactic, but it is worth keeping in mind as an option. Take note that Shield Bash will cancel your combo. You also learn the ability Iron Will, your tank stance, which multiplies enmity by 10. You should always have this active, as it practically forces enemies to focus you in combat. Take note that if you enter content where your level is scaled down, the effect of Iron Will is toggled off, so make sure to check that it is still there when you start. At level 12, you learn the ability and role action Low Blow, which stuns the enemy. This is effectively an ability version of Shield Bash, which means it comes without the damage output loss, but otherwise should be used in all the same scenarios you imagine Shield Bash to be useful in. At level 15, you learn the weapon skill Shield Lob. It comes with a massive enmity multiplier that stacks with Iron Will. If you hit something with this, that enemy should stick to you for a long time. Use this for pulling enemies, and try to use it just as the enemy gets in range when pulling with it, so you can do something else when they get up close. You can also use it for picking up enemies that appear during a fight. Take note that Shield Lob does not break your 1-2-3 combo, and can be used between the combo pieces just fine. You also learn the ability and role action Provoke. This ability sets your enmity equal to whoever has the most enmity on the target, and then applies a massive amount of enmity on top, which stacks with Iron Will. This makes it a very reliable tool for picking up enemies that appear during a fight, or enemies you lose the attention of. In a group with multiple tanks, you should not use it on cooldown. You should use it tactically when necessary. Combining Shield Lob and Provoke can allow you to reliably pull 3 enemies or more without stopping when you get comfortable with pulling multiple packs of enemies at a time. Additionally, dungeons become available at level 15, and for tanking especially, it is very useful to know a special interaction of your starting action, Sprint. Sprint lasts 20 seconds if you use it before you enter combat. If you use it while in combat, it only lasts 10 seconds, so using it just before pulling is beneficial. At level 18, you learn the ability and role action Interject, which can be used to stop interruptible actions. If an enemy is using an interruptible action, the cast bar will be red and pulsing and blinking. It is almost always beneficial to interrupt an action, so do it when you get the opportunity. When in the cast you interrupt rarely ever matters, as most enemies will do nothing for the remainder of the cast regardless. At level 22, you learn the ability and role action Reprisal, which reduces the damage all enemies around you do. You can use this action when Rampart runs out to soften the damage you receive. Try not to use both at the same time, as that is overkill for most situations. If you know the boss is using an attack that hits your entire party, Reprisal is also a good choice to bring out at that time, since it softens it for everyone, not just yourself. At level 26, you learn the weapon skill Rage of Halone, the third step of your 1-2-3 combo. As previously mentioned, due to the duration of Fight or Flight, it is commonly expected that you can fit either 8 or 9 weapon skills in its buff window. If you consistently can fit 9, then it is completely irrelevant when in your combo you use Fight or Flight, as long as you late weave it. If, on the other hand, you can only fit 8 weapon skills, there is a small gain in using Fight or Flight, specifically after Fast Blade. However, delaying Fight or Flight is simply not worth it, so it should still be used on cooldown. At level 30, doing your class quest line will eventually lead you to the Paladin quest, which is available once you complete the main scenario quest, Self-Management. Once you unlock the Paladin, remember to equip your Soul Crystal to change into the Paladin job. The starting action of the Paladin is the ability Spirits Within. You want to weave this between your weapon skills as often as possible. Just keep in mind that it also benefits from Fight or Flight, so consider delaying it just a moment to fit in Fight or Flight whenever this is possible. Typically, the first Spirits Within in a fight, and then every second one after that. You should also remember to use Spirits Within in AoE encounters, as it does not cost you anything, it is free damage, even if it is single target. The presence of Spirits Within in your toolkit also increases the value of using Fight or Flight precisely on cooldown even more. At level 32, you learn the ability and role action Arm's Length. This ability makes you immune to most knockback effects, and if a normal enemy hits you, its attack speed is slowed for a while. This makes it a very potent defensive tool on packs of enemies. I recommend adding it after Reprisal in your defensive cooldown order. At level 35, you learn the ability Sheltron and unlock the Oath Gauge. Whenever you auto-attack an enemy, which happens around every 2.2 seconds, you gain 5 Oath Gauge. Sheltron spends 50 Oath Gauge to reduce all damage you take by 15% for 4 seconds. If you have a full or near full Oath Gauge, I recommend adding Sheltron as your next defensive cooldown in your defensive order. Otherwise, saving 50 Oath Gauge for a tough spot can be helpful. This does also mean that when you start a dungeon with 100 Oath Gauge, it may be wise to start with Sheltron rather than Rampart. At level 38, you learn the ability Sentinel, which reduces damage taken even more than Rampart does. In your order of defensive cooldowns, I recommend making sure to use Sentinel and Rampart in different pulls as best you can when dealing with AoE packs, unless you absolutely need both to survive something. Remember to not overlap your defensive cooldowns outside of desperate situations, as in most circumstances it is unnecessary and excessive. My recommended use order is Sheltron, Sentinel, Reprisal. And then, for the second pull, Sheltron, Rampart, Reprisal. You can even sprinkle in more Sheltrons between cooldowns as gauge permits. This leaves Arm's Length to be usable for one of the pulls either alongside Reprisal or after it if needed. Sometimes you'll go between pulls fast enough that Reprisal won't be ready for both pulls. In this situation, Arm's Length can also replace it. This also leaves Sheltron somewhat open to be used either between these other cooldowns or on top if something really hurts. At level 40, you learn the weapon skill Prominence. This is your follow-up attack after Total Eclipse. The main difference this makes is that you should now use your Total Eclipse and Prominence on 2 or more targets. At level 45, you learn the ability Cover. This costs 50 Oath Gauge and causes nearly everything cast on the target of your choice to redirect to you, as long as you're in range, signified by the line between you and the target. Be aware that this also redirects debuffs applied by attacks, which means in a raid situation, using cover on your co-tank can lead to you getting the side effects of a tank buster. This action is very complex to use effectively, and knowing when is the right time can require a lot of practice, so it is not unusual for the button to not be used much. At level 48, you learn the ability and role action Shirk, which transfers 25% of your enmity to your target. This is used for tank switching. When your tank partner uses Provoke to grab attention, you shirk your partner to push them further ahead to ensure the enemy stays on them. This is most useful in high level content, but it is nonetheless useful to know how to use it. At level 50, you learn the ability Circle of Scorn, which does some upfront AoE damage followed by some damage over time, or DOT for short. Due to its cooldown being identical to Spirits Within, you should use this ability together with Spirits Within as much as you can. Remember that Circle of Scorn is also affected by Fight or Flight, so delaying Circle of Scorn to fit in this damage window is beneficial. It is worth mentioning that Circle of Scorn does slightly more total damage than Spirits Within, even on a single target. You also learn the ability Hallowed Ground. This is the ultimate defensive cooldown. It makes you completely impervious to most damage, with nearly no exceptions, although one of the exceptions is any damage redirected to you from cover. You can keep this as a last resort, or you can plan to use it preemptively for a particularly large pull, or an especially threatening hit from a boss. Its extremely long cooldown does however suggest you should really make sure to make it count when you do use it. If you can, try to make sure to never use it while any other defensive cooldown is active, as they will be completely wasted most of the time. To summarize at level 50, let's cover an actual boss fight opener and rotation. Pull the boss with Shield Lob as you run, then use Fast Blade and weave Fight or Flight. Then use Riot Blade and weave Circle of Scorn and Spirits Within. After that, you simply cycle through your 1-2-3 combos, using Spirits Within and Circle of Scorn on cooldown and activating Fight or Flight on cooldown. Remember that, if you have enough speed to fit 9 weapon skills in Fight or Flight, you should late weave it. The reason why you may prefer to use Fight or Flight on cooldown, regardless of whether you can fit 8 or 9 weapon skills in it, is because otherwise it may lead to you needing to delay Spirits Within and Circle of Scorn as well, which is a bigger damage loss than the gain is from ensuring an optimal Fight or Flight window, with respect to your weapon skills anyway. With that, let's continue on past level 50. At level 52, you learn the ability Bulwark, which causes you to block all attacks, which equates to around 20% damage reduction, although slightly less relatively speaking, since it increases your block chance from around 30% to 100%. I recommend using Bulwark after Rampart in your defensive order, or alternatively, even saving it to stack with another defensive cooldown for particularly brutal damage amounts. At level 54, Fight or Flight is upgraded to grant Goring Blade ready for 30 seconds, and turns into Goring Blade until it is spent. Goring Blade does a large amount of single target damage, and you have 30 seconds to use it, so use it where it makes the most sense. This is worth it as long as there are less than 6 targets for your AoE rotation. If you have enough time left in Fight or Flight for only one more GZD, and the alternative is Total Eclipse, then Goring Blade wins on 6 targets. On the other hand, Prominence wins on 5 targets. At level 56, you learn the ability Divine Veil, which shields you and your party for 10% of your maximum HP. The cooldown isn't too long, so you can use it whenever you see raid-wide damage incoming. In a pinch, you can also use it to protect just yourself or just an individual player that needs it. At level 58, you learn the spell Clemency. At this level, it works as your only MP spending action. You should only use Clemency when you or your party really needs it, as in most cases, the healers are perfectly capable of keeping the party alive without your assistance. This is also important because, as Clemency does no damage on its own, it does not help you kill the enemies faster. To help you with this new MP management issue, Spirits Within and Riot Blade will now regenerate a substantial amount of MP on each use. In a desperate situation, you can use a much weaker combo sequence of Fast Blade, Riot Blade repeatedly to recover MP more quickly to spend on Clemency. This should also only be done as a desperate measure. Take note that Clemency heals you for half the amount when you use it to heal someone else, so it is far more efficient to use it to heal other players than just yourself. At level 60, Rage of Halone is permanently upgraded to Royal Authority. While it is a potency increase, this changes nothing about your rotation. Since level 50, your defensive additions are Bulwark, Divine Veil and Clemency. For offense, Goring Blade is the only thing that changes your rotation. Now, even more so than before, you should make sure to weave Fight or Flight on the first opportunity you have when it is ready, and then immediately use Goring Blade within it. Aside from that, your attack rotation is completely unchanged. At level 62, you learn the ability Intervention, which functions as an alternative to Sheltron that you can use on allies instead. Additionally, if you use it while Rampart or Sentinel is already active, it becomes twice as powerful. If you are in a raid with more than one tank, and you're not currently tanking, you can make good use of assisting your co-tank with this. In general, if you have a party member that needs a little extra help surviving an attack, you can also use this, instead of shielding yourself with Sheltron. If nothing else, just throw this out there if you're not tanking and you're sitting on full Oath Gauge. At level 64, you learn the spell Holy Spirit, which, with a cast time and an MP cost, does a respectable amount of damage. Holy Spirit does not break your combo and deals significantly more damage than Shield Lob, making it an excellent option for pulling bosses, or if you cannot be in range of your target. However, casting it delays your auto attacks by 1 second, which both delays Oath Gauge generation and also is equivalent to losing approximately 30 potency worth of damage. For this reason, compared to 1-2-3 combos, Holy Spirit is a small damage loss to use as it is baseline. The biggest benefit is the fact that Holy Spirit is ranged, which can be helpful in situations where you cannot be safely in melee range. You also learn the trait Divine Magic Mastery, which halves the cost of Clemency and also makes you immune to casting interruption from damage, although hopefully you hardly ever experienced this in the first place. Additionally, this trait also upgrades Royal Authority to give you the Divine Might buff, which causes your next Holy Spirit to have no cast time and also do 100 more potency of damage. Take note that Holy Spirit still costs MP with this buff, and if you use each of these buffs whenever they are available, you should, then this new sort of 1-2-3-4 combo sequence is MP neutral. So using Holy Spirit too excessively outside of it could become problematic. Remember, this is not a damage gain to do anyway. Try to enter Fight or Flight with Divine Magic available. Take note that you don't have to follow up Royal Authority immediately with Holy Spirit, and you can delay it until just before Royal Authority in your combo sequence. Saving some MP to have Clemency or Holy Spirits beyond this is not a bad idea. But remember that casting Holy Spirit without Divine Might is a very small damage loss, even at this level. The perfect Fight or Flight starts with Goring Blade, Divine Might Holy Spirit, Royal Authority, Divine Might Holy Spirit, and then a 1-2-3 combo finishing with another Divine Might Holy Spirit. As there is no significant damage gain from going out of your way to perfectly align your combo for Fight or Flight in this way at higher level especially, you may prefer to simply adjust a bit on the fly to where you happen to be in your rotation when Fight or Flight comes up. Finally, the presence of Divine Might makes your 1-2-3 combo, while including Holy Spirit with Divine Might, superior to your AoE combo on 2 targets. On 3 or more targets, you still use Total Eclipse and Prominence. At level 68, you learn the ability Requiescat, which does some damage, which is affected by Fight or Flight, and grants you 4 stacks of the Requiescat buff. Take note that Requiescat's cooldown lines up with Fight or Flight, so it should be used in every Fight or Flight window. The Requiescat buff causes Holy Spirit to do 300 more potency, and also have no cast time. While not particularly crucially important, take note that Divine Might is spent first should you have both buffs, which you usually will. At this level, you want to make sure that you enter Fight or Flight with at least 4000 MP, if not 5 or 6000, to make sure you can afford everything. For AoE, spending the Requiescat stacks on Holy Spirit is better than using your AoE combo on up to 4 targets. With 5 or more targets, it is better to simply let the Requiescat stacks sit there. Optionally, you can switch to Holy Spirit casts as less targets are present. Notably, as Holy Spirit is a spell, it is incredibly unlikely you will ever be able to fit 9 GCDs inside Fight or Flight anymore with this many Holy Spirit casts, even if you late weave Fight or Flight. As such, it is not a bad idea to weave Fight or Flight and then Requiescat in the same window in that order. At level 70, you learn the ability Passage of Arms, which makes you block all attacks and also reduces the damage taken by allies behind you by 15%. You cannot do any other actions while using this, so you should only use it when anticipating large amounts of damage. You can also use it to soften damage in cases where no enemies are attackable anyway. Weaving Passage of Arms between GCDs for just a brief moment will apply the damage reduction effect for about 5 seconds to all allies behind you, which can be helpful for raid-wide as well. Since level 60, you have added a couple of new magic additions to your attack arsenal, namely Holy Spirit, Divine Might and Requiescat, which leads to a somewhat altered opener and burst every minute. Pull with Holy Spirit, then use Fast Blade, weave both Fight or Flight and Requiescat. Then use Goring Blade, weaving Circle of Scorn and Spirits Within. Then cast 4 Holy Spirits back to back, followed by Riot Blade, Royal Authority and Divine Might Holy Spirit. When you perform your rotation between bursts, you should try to save Divine Might if there's not time for another Royal Authority combo before Fight or Flight is ready again. Simply weave Fight or Flight immediately when it is ready, alongside Requiescat. The minute burst is identical to the opener, with the key difference being that after the 4 back-to-back Holy Spirits, you fill with the 3 best GCDs you have. The priority is 1. Boosted Holy Spirit, 2. Royal Authority combo steps. Both in the burst and in the filler, keep in mind that you can use the instant Holy Spirits if you have to step away from the target, so adjusting your rotation around this option can be immensely helpful. At level 72, you learn the spell Holy Circle, which is an AoE alternative to Holy Spirit. Take note that Holy Circle on its own is not worth using, as it is equal in strength to Total Eclipse. However, Divine Might also applies to Holy Circle, which doubles its potency, making it your strongest AoE attack. Similarly, Requiescat triples the potency of Holy Circle, which obviously doesn't change anything when it was already so strong. With Divine Might or Requiescat, Holy Circle should take priority on 3 or more targets. You also learn the trait Enhanced Prominence, which causes Prominence to recover MP just like Riot Blade, and also causes it to apply Divine Might like Royal Authority. Neither of these effects change your relationship with Prominence itself, but does enable you to both make use of and afford Holy Circle on AoE. At level 74, you learn the ability Intervene, which is a gap-closing attack that does some damage. You can have up to 2 uses of it at a time, and you gain 1 every 30 seconds. It should always be prioritized to use Intervene for movement, but if you know for certain you won't need them for that, you can plan to use both in a Fight or Flight window, since the damage of Intervene is boosted by it. Just keep in mind that saving both Intervenes for Fight or Flight equates to about 75 potency gained in total. If you end up spending a single second of time with your GCD ready, but not able to attack anything because you don't use Intervene, you have wasted at least 75 potency, even if it's just Fast Blade that you're delaying. So don't focus too heavily on using Intervene in Fight or Flight. It is a good idea to use at least one of the charges in Fight or Flight, such that it isn't sitting fully ready the entire time. Additionally, the duration of Sheltron is increased to 6 seconds, making it much better. At level 76, Royal Authority is upgraded to grant you Atonement ready for 30 seconds when used. You also learn the Atonement combo, which uses this effect. Atonement itself spends the Atonement effect, does the same damage as Royal Authority, restores some MP, and turns into Supplication. Supplication does slightly more damage, but is otherwise the same attack, and turns into Sepulture, which does slightly more damage, but is again otherwise the same. Sepulture notably does the same damage as Holy Spirit. This entire combo does not cancel your main combo, which means you can use Fast Blade, Riot Blade, Royal Authority, Fast Blade, Riot Blade, do the entire Atonement combo, Holy Spirit, and then Royal Authority again, as long as you come back to the combo within 30 seconds, as combos naturally run out after 30 seconds if not extended upon. What this means for your rotation is that, in the opener, add Riot Blade and Royal Authority before the initial Fight or Flight. As your filler at the end of the burst, you can either use all 3 Atonement combo steps, or 2 of them and Holy Spirit. For the burst windows after that, your filler priority is changed to 1. Boosted Holy Spirit, 2. Sepulture, 3. Supplication, 4. Atonement, and 5. Royal Authority combo steps. The optimal combo of filler actions in your burst is Sepulture, Supplication, and Holy Spirit, in any order. This means that when you're not in Fight or Flight, your aim is to set this up as best you can. So outside of Fight or Flight, your priority is 1. Atonement, 2. Fast Blade, 3. Riot Blade, 4. Supplication, 5. Holy Spirit, 6. Sepulture, 7. Royal Authority. So try and make this optimal sequence come up in the burst as much as possible. Still, make sure to use Fight or Flight on cooldown, and make the most of the burst you're given. Take note in your bursts that as Holy Spirit spends Divine Might first, if you went into the burst with Divine Might, the first Holy Spirit you use will effectively be a filler Holy Spirit and not a Requiescat Holy Spirit, which can log up your filler options a bit. At level 80, you learn the spell Confiteor, and Requiescat is improved to give you the Confiteor Ready buff. Confiteor also spends Requiescat stacks, and its damage, which includes an AoE component, scales far better than both Holy Spirit and Holy Circle, so you should always make sure to use Confiteor with a Requiescat stack. However, should you mess up and this is not available, Confiteor can still be used without Requiescat, albeit at a significant damage loss. Aside from the fact that you now use Confiteor in place of something else, this does not really change your rotation at all. Since level 70, we learned in particular the Atonement combo, Confiteor and Intervene. We adjust the opener and rotation slightly to make space for them. Pull with Holy Spirit, then do Fast Blade, Riot Blade, Royal Authority, and then weave both Fight or Flight and Requiescat. Then use Goring Blade, weaving Circle of Scorn and Spirits Within. Then use Confiteor, weaving Intervene, followed by a Holy Spirit and another Intervene. Then do 3 more Holy Spirits, and then the full Atonement combo. For the downtime between bursts, prioritize preparing Supplication and Divine Might. Then prepare so Royal Authority is ready, and then spend Supplication, Holy Spirit, Sepulture, and then Royal Authority, and start over with the setup again. Optimally, the filler part of your burst should include Holy Spirit, Supplication, and Sepulture if possible. Atonement or Royal Authority is a decent option as well. Take note, however, that since Divine Might takes priority over Requiescat when using Holy Spirit, that if you start a burst with Divine Might in hand, it will be the 4th Holy Spirit that spends the last Requiescat stack, not the 3rd, as the first Holy Spirit will be spending Divine Might instead. This will make a bit more sense later. At level 82, Sheltron is permanently upgraded to Holy Sheltron, increasing its duration to 8 seconds. This also applies another, identical defensive buff for the first 4 seconds that makes it even stronger, rewarding you for using it just before large damage hits. In addition to that, it also applies a heal over time effect to you, healing for 1000 potency over 12 seconds. Intervention is also empowered to last 8 seconds, also applies this extra defensive buff, although a slightly weaker version, and it also applies the heal over time effect. Essentially, you can now use Holy Sheltron as a healing tool, and timing it well makes it easily your best defensive cooldown aside from Hallowed Ground and Sentinel. For large dungeon pulls at these levels, it may feel overwhelming to only use one cooldown at a time, and in these situations, my recommendation is to use Holy Sheltron first, and then Sentinel, and then Holy Sheltron again if possible, and if needed, you can even combine it with one of your weaker cooldowns like Reprisal as necessary. Due to the healing component of Holy Sheltron and Intervention, you should make sure to use it if you cap on Oath Gauge. At level 84, your 1-2-3 combo, the Atonement combo, and Holy Spirit gets a potency boost. What this changes is that in your burst, Holy Spirit is more valuable than Sepulture, so in the opener, Atonement, Supplication, Holy Spirit specifically as your filler in the burst. Additionally, all of your damaging spells now heal you for 400 potency as a bonus. This does not change how you use them, but the regular healing is really helpful. You will most likely feel this healing is most significant during Requiescat, where you cast many spells in quick succession, and on AoE pulls, where around every 3rd action is a spell. If you need even more healing, in a pinch, you can also choose to cast Holy Spirits or Holy Circles without Divine Might for the combination of damage and healing. Although, in the case of Holy Circles specifically, in these desperate situations, it may be better to simply cast Clemency once and save the GCD to maybe get around to another Divine Might quicker. At level 86, Spirits Within is permanently upgraded to Expiation, massively increasing its damage and adding an AoE component to it. This does not change how you use it though. At level 88, Divine Veil is upgraded to additionally heal everyone affected for 400 potency. This can be helpful if you make sure to use Divine Veil when damage is incoming and the party is not at full HP, but otherwise the way you use it is unchanged. At level 90, Confiteor is extended with the 3 Blades combo, Blade of Faith, Blade of Truth, and Blade of Valor. This combo automatically is used by repeatedly pressing the Confiteor button. Each blade does increasingly more damage and costs MP and spends Requiescat stacks. Similarly to Confiteor, they all scale far better than Holy Spirit and Holy Circle, and include AoE components. They also receive the effect of healing you for 400 potency on cast. Now, shockingly, this does not actually change your rotation very much, as they simply replace the 3 remaining Requiescat Holy Spirits in your opener and bursts, and on AoE, they replace the remaining Requiescat Holy Circles. Since level 80, a potency increase and the addition of the Blades combo changed your burst very slightly. In the opener and bursts, simply replace the Requiescat Holy Spirits with the Blades combo that comes after Confiteor. For the filler part, in the opener, use Atonement, Supplication and Holy Spirit. For the general bursts, Holy Spirit has the highest priority, then Sepulture, Supplication, then the rest. Aside from this, your rotation is mostly unchanged. Notably, your attack spells also heal you now, and Holy Sheltron also heals you and is an incredibly effective defensive option in general. At level 92, Sentinel permanently upgrades to Guardian, making it reduce damage by 40% instead of 30%. It also applies a large shield to you that can crit and benefits from healing increasing effects. None of this actually changes how you use it, although now it is really strong. At level 94, Rampart is upgraded to also increase healing received in its duration, and also all of your single target filler attacks, as well as Confiteor and the Blades combo, get potency boosts. Notably, this makes Supplication equal to Holy Spirit and Sepulture superior to it, so in your opener, aim to fill a full Atonement combo in the filler section of the burst. In general bursts, Sepulture is highest priority, with Supplication and Holy Spirit being equal in second place, and then Atonement and Royal Authority bringing in third and fourth. At level 96, Requiescat permanently upgrades to Imperator, increasing its potency, adding an AoE component, and making it ranged. This does not change how you use it, however. At level 98, Reprisal is upgraded to last 15 seconds instead of 10. This does not change how you use it. At level 100, Blade of Valor, the final blade, grants you Blade of Honor Ready, which turns Imperator into Blade of Honor until it is spent. Blade of Honor is another OGCD that hits incredibly hard that you should simply use immediately after Blade of Valor. To round off, let's first talk about an opener, followed by general rotation as well as burst considerations. And finally, let's briefly touch on stat priorities on gear. Let's begin. 2 seconds before pull, start by casting Holy Spirit, then use Fast Blade, Riot Blade, and if you intend to use a gem draft, weave it here. Then use Royal Authority, and then weave Fight or Flight and Imperator. Then use Confiteor, weaving Circle of Scorn and Expiation. Then use Blade of Faith, weaving Intervene, Blade of Truth, weaving Intervene, Blade of Valor, weaving Blade of Honor, then finish up with Goring Blade, Atonement, Supplication, Sepulture, and then outside of Fight or Flight, use Holy Spirit. If you need an Intervene for mobility reasons, or you have to step away from the boss in a second, you can hold an Intervene or Holy Spirit for that. This then leads to the general rotation. Outside of bursts, you simply go down a priority list of 1. Use Atonement, 2. Fast Blade Riot Blade, 3. Supplication, 4. Holy Spirit, 5. Sepulture, 6. Royal Authority. Additionally, you should use Expiation and Circle of Scorn as they become available. You should also use Fight or Flight followed by Imperator on cooldown and immediately go into the Confiteor combo like in the opener. Then, after that, use Goring Blade and then work through your 3 fillers in the following priority. 1. Sepulture, 2. Supplication, 3. Holy Spirit, 4. Atonement, 5. Royal Authority combos. Note that using Holy Spirit to shift your rotation to get just the right filler burst is not worth it. And you should only use Holy Spirits without Divine Might if you cannot be in melee range to attack otherwise. During the burst, while I recommend you start with a big magic burst, you can freely flip the order if it is more convenient for the particular fight to have the ranged magic burst in the second half of Fight or Flight. For AoE adjustments, on 3 or more targets, replace the entire filler rotation with Total Eclipse, Prominence and Holy Circle. In bursts, Goring Blade is prioritized lower than Holy Circle on at least 4 targets, Prominence on at least 5 targets, and Total Eclipse on 8 or more targets. All of your other attack buttons should be used as on single target. Remember to regularly use your defensive cooldowns, and if you aren't actively tanking, You can use Intervention on your co-tank, and if you don't expect to need it, you can probably use Rampart to boost Intervention further while you're at it. Finally, regarding stat priorities, take note that in nearly every single case, item level beats out optimal secondary stats. This means you should always prioritize gear with higher item level, as long as it has strength on it. After that, Paladin's stat priority is critical hit, then direct hit, and then determination. And finally, tenacity. Take note that direct hit and determination are extremely close in value to each other. Fortunately, direct hit is only found on materia for tanks, so you simply melt direct hit into pieces that you don't need critical hit for. Direct hit can sometimes be so strong that it overtakes even critical hit in damage value. Tenacity is last because it is like a slightly worse determination in terms of damage output, and the damage reduction component is simply not needed in most situations, so it is preferred to prioritize maximizing your damage output instead. Skill speed is incredibly unhelpful for paladins as it does nothing for all of your spells, which is a very large percentage of your attacks. As such, you should aim to have as little skill speed as possible, if any at all. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to support me and my channel more directly, you can become a member like these wonderful people here. You can also alternatively support me through Ko-Fi, link in the description. You can also support the channel by letting the YouTube algorithm know by liking the video, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the bell to get notified when next I post a video. Fun fact, when Paladin originally got reworked, Atonement still broke your 1-2-3 combos. This led to a much more rigid rotation, which also sort of almost meant that using Holy Spirit to shift your rotation to match up with Fight or Flight more optimally was almost kind of worthwhile. This was however changed relatively quickly.